Have you ever walked into a place and felt something was just off? Not because of anything you could point at, but because your instincts started to whisper, telling you to stay alert, telling you to get out. Most people ignore that feeling. They call it anxiety, maybe lack of sleep, but some people know better. Some people have seen what happens when you stay in a place like that too long. Especially when the world outside has gone quiet and you're stuck under humming lights that never seem to blink. Before we fall too deep into tonight's shift, do me a quick favor. If you're already gripping your blanket, if your eyes are wide in the dark, take a second to like this video and subscribe for more stories just like this one. You never know which one might find you next. And hey, let me know in the comments, which city are you listening from tonight? I want to know where the night is darkest. Now, back to the story. That's exactly what David felt the night he started his new job at Walmart. It wasn't his dream gig. He was in his mid-30s, recently divorced, and trying to find something steady enough to keep his life from slipping any further. The night shift paid better, and the idea of less customer interaction sounded like a blessing. Just show up, keep your head down, and go home before the sun rises. Easy enough. His first night was uneventful on the surface. He got the tour, learnt the rules, and met his shift supervisor, a man named Bill who seemed far too calm for a guy managing a graveyard shift. Bill had this way of speaking that felt rehearsed, like he'd told the same story 1,000 times, but no longer believed it. When they walked past aisle 9, Bill slowed down, barely glanced at it, and said something strange. He told David not to bother with that section, claimed they didn't stock it anymore, and quickly moved on. Except David had eyes. There were products on the shelves, old-looking ones, brands he didn't recognize, boxes with faded colors and names that didn't sound quite right. And there was something about the air there, still cold, like stepping into a room that had been sealed off from time. David wasn't the type to ask too many questions. He kept his distance, stocked shelves, rolled his cart through aisles, tried to tune out the occasional pop from the ceiling lights all the way. Some of the TVs and electronics would flash static for a split second before returning to black screens. For the first few nights, he told himself it was just the quiet messing with him. But then came the sound. It was around 2:45 a.m. when he heard it. A small metallic clink, like a coin spinning on tile. He paused, turned around, expecting to see someone who'd dropped change, but there was no one there. The store felt bigger than usual in that moment, like the silence had expanded the walls. He inched closer to where he thought the sound had come from, and then he saw her dot at the edge of aisle 9, crouched down with her hair covering her face, was a woman. She was gripping a shopping basket with both hands, not moving, just there, silent, frozen in place. David blinked, and when he opened his eyes again, she was gone. He didn't run, he didn't scream. He just walked away, fast and quiet. Maybe that's what kept him safe that night. Or maybe she wasn't done yet. The next morning, he told Bill what he saw, or tried to. Bill gave him a look he had clearly given before, one part pity, one part warning. He said it was normal for new hires to see things. Sleep schedules, isolation, flickering lights. Your mind starts playing tricks. David nodded along, but something in his gut told him this wasn't that kind of trick. He started keeping a journal in his locker, writing things down, not to prove anything to anyone else, but to remind himself he wasn't crazy. The entries started small, just notes about strange smells, flickering lights, or that moment when the overhead music would cut out completely, leaving the store in dead silence. But then they started to get darker. Saw her again, 3:17 a.m. Same basket, same crouch. She looked up this time. Voices in the vents above the back room, whispering fast. Couldn't understand the words. Every screen in electronics lit up at once. Her face, just her eyes, staring, blinking in sync. He was going to quit. He really was. But something made him stay. Call it fear, call it curiosity. Sometimes the two are twins wearing different masks. He needed to know what was happening. On his third week, they hired another guy. Caleb, young, easygoing, laughed at everything. Still had the optimism David lost somewhere around his second divorce. David warned him on his first night, told him not to go near aisle 9. Caleb just laughed and said, "What's it gonna do? Give me rollback nightmares." That night, Caleb vanished. 43 minutes of radio silence. No one could find him, not even on the cameras. When he finally walked out from behind the deli counter, his face looked wrong, empty, like something had paused him mid-thought. When David asked where he'd been, Caleb just mumbled something about mop heads, then dropped a porcelain baby doll onto the floor. He wasn't holding a mop. The next day, the store cat, a chubby orange tabby that everyone called Meatloaf, didn't show up. They found his collar near the loading dock, scratched and bent out of shape. There was a strange smell in the air. Sulfur, sharp and sour. The kind that sticks in your clothes and under your fingernails. It was the kind of smell that said, something bad had been here. Something old. Now let me ask you something, just to reset your attention. Ever notice those fake plants they keep at the ends of aisles? Ever see them move? David started watching one in particular. A tall plastic ficus that stood at the mouth of aisle 9. Every morning, it faced a new direction. Once toward the freezers, once toward the employee break room. One morning, it was tilted straight up, as if staring at the ceiling. He brought in a small camera from home. Cheap, motion activated, tucked it behind a box of cereal samples. The next night, he reviewed the footage on his phone. He never shared what he saw, but he stopped writing for 2 days after that. The journal came back eventually, just one line. It moved, not dragged, not pushed. It turned. He started planning his exit after that, put in notice, packed his things, said goodbye to no one. At 4:45 a.m., before the sun rose, he grabbed his stuff and left, or tried to. The sliding doors wouldn't open. His key fob didn't register at the gate. His phone had no signal. The parking lot, once surrounded by streetlights, was pitch dark. He stepped outside his car for better reception and realized something terrifying. The lights from inside the Walmart were glowing differently. Not outward, inward. Like the building wasn't lighting the lot, but consuming it. Like everything outside had been erased. And that was only the beginning. The first thing David noticed was the stillness. Not the regular kind you find at 5 a.m. when the world is catching its breath. This stillness was deeper, heavier. The kind that made the hair on the back of your neck rise and stay standing. His phone screen showed full bars for a split second, then dropped to 0. Just like that, his car's engine wouldn't turn over. The headlights blinked once, then nothing. It was as if every piece of technology had suddenly decided to fall asleep. Or worse, go silent on purpose. David stood by the driver's door, breathing shallow, staring at the Walmart entrance behind him. Those lights weren't natural. They pulsed, faintly, like a slow heartbeat. The glow wasn't just illumination. It had depth, weight, as if the building wasn't just lit up, but alive, in a way David didn't want to understand. He stepped back inside, slowly, not because he wanted to, but because he felt pulled, like gravity had changed direction. The floor felt sticky, like molasses had been poured over the tiles. His footsteps made no sound, not even a squeak from his sneakers. The silence followed him like a predator. Not a sound, not a hum, not even the usual buzzing of the fridges in the frozen food section. The break room was empty, but not untouched. His locker door was open. The journal he had locked up inside was lying on the table. Its pages fluttered as though someone had just flipped through them. He approached it cautiously. Someone had circled a line in red ink. He hadn't written it himself. "She's still in the basket." His breath caught. That sentence hadn't been there before. The pen strokes were shaky, jagged, like they were written in a rush or by a trembling hand. He flipped through the rest of the journal, but all the pages were blank. Not just empty, clean, as if every word he had written had been scrubbed off. Only that one line remained. He heard something then, not loud, not sudden, just a slow, creaking wheel turning. He looked down the hallway and saw a shopping cart rolling on its own. No one pushing it. It wobbled slightly, its left front wheel squeaking with each rotation. And inside the cart, nestled like some forgotten item, was that same porcelain baby doll Caleb had dropped. Its head turned toward David as if it had been waiting. David turned and ran, not with direction, just with instinct. Through the pharmacy, down electronics, past the seasonal aisle where plastic pumpkins and fake spider webs still hung out of season. He stopped at the garden center doors, pushed, locked. The emergency exit was sealed shut. He slammed the glass, looked up at the black sky. No stars, no moon. Just a void staring back at him. He wasn't alone anymore. Voices started to drift in. Low, like distant singing. Multiple tones. Some high, some guttural. Not words exactly, but patterns. Almost like lullabies, sung backward. He turned toward the source and saw movement in the reflection of a microwave door. Shadows slithering just out of frame. But when he spun around, there was nothing there. Something was changing in the store. The layout felt wrong. Aisles that used to be parallel were now twisted. The toy section led into dairy. The customer service desk opened into sporting goods. He walked in circles and ended up back at the same spot. Each time he passed the cart with the doll, it was closer. First 10 feet away, then 5, then right behind him. He picked it up, threw it across the aisle, heard it shatter. But when he looked again, it was whole. Sitting in the cart, its eyes wide open now. At this point, David began to question reality. Was he dreaming? Had he snapped? He pinched his skin hard, felt the pain, tried to scream just to hear something human. The sound died before it left his throat. The silence swallowed it whole. That's when the announcements started. Walmart is now closed. Thank you for shopping with us. It was the regular store voice, but wrong, slower, like it had been dragged across gravel. The words slurred together. Please return all items to the shelves. Your presence has been noted. David ran again, toward the manager's office. If he could just make a phone call, hit the panic alarm, anything. But the office was locked, and through the tiny glass pane, he saw someone sitting in the chair. At first, he thought it was Bill. But Bill didn't wear a mask made of shopping receipts. The figure turned its head slowly. The receipts crinkled and shifted. Glimpses of facial features beneath. A mouth too wide. Eyes that didn't blink, just stared. On the desk was a radio. David knocked, pounded the door. The figure didn't move. It just reached out slowly and turned the radio dial. White noise filled the hallway. Then a voice. "She's still in the basket." David collapsed, hands over ears, rocking slightly. Whatever this was, it wasn't just haunting him. It was learning him, studying his reactions, bending reality around his choices. He remembered Caleb then, thought about how blank his eyes looked, thought about the doll, thought about the line in the journal. Something clicked. It wanted him to look, to really look. He forced himself up and walked toward aisle 9. The air grew colder, denser. Every aisle he passed felt more distorted. Products flickered like static images, labels unreadable, colors wrong. He stepped into aisle 9 and felt the shift immediately, like passing through a membrane. She was there, crouched, just like before. But now, she was moving, rocking slowly, back and forth. The basket was empty now, but she clutched it like a lifeline. Her face was half covered in hair, but one eye peered through. Pale, almost blue, unblinking. David didn't speak. He just stared, and she stared back. Then she stood up. The basket stayed suspended in the air for a moment before clattering to the ground. Her limbs unfolded too long, too loose, like a puppet being pulled upright. She opened her mouth and let out a sound that wasn't a scream, but a broken note, like someone learning how to mimic a scream, but not quite human. And just as suddenly as it began, she vanished. David turned to run, but found himself in a different aisle. No shelves, just mirrors, endless reflections of himself. Some were accurate, some were not. In one, he was wearing the receipt mask. In another, he was the one pushing the cart. And in one, he was gone entirely. Just a floating journal and a baby doll in his place. He reached forward and touched the mirror. It rippled. He was pulled through. When he woke up, he was in the break room. The lights were normal. The fridge was humming again. He checked his watch. 6:12 a.m. Sunlight was pouring in through the warehouse windows. The store was back, but something was off. His journal was gone. Caleb was sitting across from him, eating a granola bar, acting like nothing had happened. When David asked him what time it was, Caleb shrugged, said he'd just clocked in. Bill walked in a minute later, looked at David, and said, "You look like you had a rough night." David didn't reply. He walked to the exit. This time, the doors opened. His car started. The signal returned to his phone. But when he got home and opened his glove box, there it was. The porcelain doll smiling. David didn't scream. He didn't throw the doll. He didn't even move. He just stared at it, frozen in place, like somehow his body knew better than his mind. The doll's porcelain cheeks were cracked, but the smile that stayed perfect. Small, delicate, mocking. The same expression it had the first time Caleb dropped it in front of the frozen food aisle. And now here it was, waiting for him, sitting neatly in a space it had no business being. He slammed the glove box shut. His hands trembled as he started the car and pulled out of the Walmart parking lot. The town looked normal. People were jogging. The bakery down the street had smoke coming out of its chimney. Kids were waiting for the school bus with their backpacks slung low. But David didn't feel like he had returned to the world. He felt like he had slipped into a copy of it, one that looked the same but wasn't quite right. At home, nothing felt familiar. The couch cushions were dented in places he didn't remember sitting. The fridge had food he didn't buy. His TV turned itself on to static. And there was a receipt stuck to the screen. It only had one item listed: Observer. He went back to Walmart that night. He didn't clock in. He didn't speak to Bill. He waited in his car until the parking lot emptied, then walked in through the back dock. No plan, just one goal: get to the manager's office. Something about that room had been watching him. He felt it, and he wanted to watch it back. The store was alive again. Not like a building, like a thing with breath and memory. The lights flickered in rhythms. The music played in reverse. Aisle signs shifted positions when he turned his head, and that plastic ficus. By aisle 9, it was gone. Only a scorched circle on the tile remained. He reached the office. The door creaked open this time. No resistance. Inside, the chair was empty. The receipt mask lay shredded on the floor, but on the desk, the radio was still there. He picked it up. The knob was hot. Not warm, hot. When he turned it, it crackled. Then a voice spoke. "You've seen too much." David didn't answer. He wanted to speak, but his voice felt trapped in his chest. His throat burned. The radio buzzed again. "She was never meant to be found. And now you've brought her home." A chill rolled down his spine. He stepped back, and the office door slammed shut behind him. Not with wind, with intent. The walls began to hum. Not loudly, more like the sound of electricity in the bones. His vision blurred. Then, on the security monitors, he saw himself standing in aisle 9 again and again. Live feeds. But they were all different. In one, he was on fire. In another, he was surrounded by dolls. In the last one, he was staring into the camera, smiling like he'd been replaced. He unplugged the monitors. The screen turned black. Then it flashed. A single sentence. "The basket is never empty." He ran down the hallway, past the meat section. The air had changed. It smelled like burnt hair and soil, rotten and rich at the same time. He rounded the corner and stopped cold. Caleb stood in front of him, pale, wide-eyed, holding the doll. "She wants to see you," he said. David tried to move, but something had hold of his feet. Not physically, it was like gravity had locked him in place. Caleb stepped forward, lifted the doll, and pressed it to David's chest. The moment it touched him, the store vanished. Now he was outside. Except not really. The sky was grey. Not dark, not light, just colorless. The streets were gone. The buildings were flattened, melted into the horizon. He stood in the parking lot of a Walmart that stretched into the clouds, taller than it should have been, and standing at the edge of the roof was the woman, the one from aisle 9. No basket now, just her. She jumped, he screamed, but the scream echoed in reverse, pulling the air back into his lungs. Then everything blinked. He was on the floor of the break room, choking on his own breath. Bill stood over him, a paper cup of water in his hand. "You passed out," Bill said. Calm to calm, shifts over. David stared at him, couldn't form the words, couldn't ask the questions. Bill just smiled and patted his shoulder. "Don't dig too deep here," he said. "This place has layers." When David got to his car, the glove box was open again. The doll was gone, but a receipt had taken its place. No return, no exchange, no escape. And in the corner, the date stamp read 1 day ahead. He hadn't even noticed the time loss. He had been in that store longer than he remembered. Hours, maybe days, at home. His TV wouldn't turn on. His phone refused to charge. And then, At exactly 3:17 a.m., the doorbell rang. He didn't answer it. Instead, he looked through the peephole. No one. He went back to the living room, and there, sitting on the couch, was Caleb, eyes wide, still holding the basket. David didn't even have time to speak. Caleb opened his mouth, but instead of words, he hissed, a long, shrill whistle. Then, he crumpled like paper and vanished into smoke. The basket stayed. That was the moment David understood. The basket wasn't just an object, it was a door, and someone had just stepped through. A voice behind him whispered, "You're next." When he turned, the room was empty. But his reflection in the television, that was still staring back, and it didn't blink. David couldn't look away from the reflection. It didn't follow his movements. It just stared, fixed, unwavering, as if it wasn't a reflection at all, but a version of himself that had stayed behind. His chest tightened. Every instinct in him screamed to smash the screen, to run, to pray, but none of those options seemed real anymore. The house felt smaller, the air thicker, and from the kitchen came the faint sound of wheels turning, metal squeaking gently over. The floor, the basket, was moving. He hadn't touched it. No one had. But now it was in the hallway, slowly rolling toward him like it had something to deliver. He didn't want to see what was inside. He told himself not to look. But like a moth to fire, his eyes drifted down. It was empty, but only for a moment. A hand rose from it, not a full one, just fingers, thin, wet, covered in what looked like ash and ink. They gripped the edge of the basket like a spider pulling itself up, inch by inch. He backed away slowly, breath shaking, every step heavier than the last. The hallway stretched behind him, longer than before, walls shifting like they were made of mist. The ceiling bowed inward, then the lights flickered. Out, darkness swallowed everything. David froze. There was no sound, not even the basket, just the thudding of his heart. Then came a whisper, so close it felt like it came from inside his own skull. You opened it. Light returned, dim and cold. He was no longer in his house. He was back in Walmart, but not the one he knew. This version was hollow, decayed, like it had been abandoned for decades. The floors were cracked, shelves toppled, fluorescent bulbs swung from broken wires. It reeked of mold and something deeper, that same sulfuric rot from before. He wandered the aisles, calling out, but his voice never echoed. It vanished the moment it left his throat. He saw figures moving in the corners, but when he turned, they dissolved into dust. A mannequin with no eyes waved at him. A row of frozen turkeys all turned their heads in unison as he passed. None of it felt random. Everything was watching. Finally, he reached aisle 9. It wasn't an aisle anymore. It was a stairway now, descending into blackness. At the top of it hung a single sign, written in crooked letters on cardboard. Customer returns. Only he hesitated. But there was no turning back. He descended. Each step down felt longer than the last. The walls narrowed. The air thickened. Whispers returned, brushing past his ears. Names, places, dates, things he hadn't told anyone. Regrets he buried. The staircase opened into a wide space with no ceiling. Just stars above, but not the stars he knew. These were red, and they blinked. In the center of the floor was the basket, and around it, in a perfect circle, were people, Caleb, Bill, others. He didn't know. All of them crouched, heads down, arms clutching invisible items. Faces hollow, like waxed figures melted under a weak sun. The doll stood atop the basket. It was no longer inanimate. It was moving, breathing. Its head turned toward him with an audible crack. David wanted to speak, to ask what it wanted, but it raised a finger to its lips. And then he saw her, the woman from aisle 9, but not crouched, not broken. She stood tall now. Her eyes were wide, but the whites were gone, replaced by a swirling void. Her mouth opened inhumanly wide, and from it poured a sound so loud and so quiet at once that David's knees buckled. It wasn't a scream, it was something older, something not meant for humans to hear. He dropped to the floor, hands over ears, bleeding, and she whispered again, "Return to sender." The light shattered. Reality snapped like glass under pressure. When David opened his eyes again, he was lying in the real Walmart. Morning light bled through the high windows. Birds chirped outside. The aisles were clean, shelves stocked. He stood, walked slowly to the front. People were entering, customers, smiling, laughing. Normal. Bill was at the register, handing out smiles and greeting shoppers. David approached him. "You saw it," Bill said without turning. "You walked the whole loop." "What is it?" David asked, voice hoarse. "The store remembers," Bill said. "It holds on to things, forgotten people, forgotten thoughts. Sometimes things slip through, and the basket, it finds the cracks." David looked down. The doll was in the cart of a little girl nearby, smiling again. The girl giggled and pushed it along. Her mother paid no attention. David backed away, left the store, got into his car. The sky looked normal. His phone worked. The world spun like nothing had ever happened. But deep down, he knew he'd been marked. He could feel it in his dreams. In the way mirrors lagged when he walked past. In the whispering static of radios. In the way the world now bent, just slightly, at the edges. He kept the lights on at night. He threw the TV away. He never shopped at Walmart again. But even months later, when he stood in a different store, in a different town, he felt the presence. And one day, walking past a toy shelf, he stopped cold. There it was, the same doll, in a box labeled "Inventory Unknown." He left immediately, and when he got into his car, the radio turned on by itself. "You can't return what you've already claimed," it said. Then silence. That night, he burned every receipt in his house, tore up old journals, deleted messages. But when he opened the fridge, there it sat, not the doll, the basket waiting. And somewhere behind him, a familiar voice whispered, "Your shift's not over."